Okay, let's jump into the signing that was pretty much capping off Yzerman's work, barring something surprising happening, which is it's Steve Yzerman, so you never know, for the summer. Filip Zadina, where there was only quiet and there was a long length of time where we heard nothing about it, signed. He was a restricted free agent. Signed a 3-year, $1.825 million per year contract, extending with the Red Wings, and he is still a restricted free agent upon expiry of that contract. So, initial thoughts.
There's a big range of possibilities as to how this contract's going to play out. And if you're talking just the likely ones, none of them are bad. If Filip Zadina does not improve 1 ounce from what he is currently, this is a perfectly reasonable price to pay a good third liner who can chip in 25, 30-ish points. 1.8 isn't a ton, and that's good value for what Zadina currently is. And despite his struggles, I'd say the odds of Zadina regressing are extremely low. Based on, just the way he's been playing, the bad luck he's already had, and some of the other things he's been working through, and some of his strengths, obviously. But the other end of this spectrum of possibilities is in 3 years, we're talking about the last year of this contract as one of the best value contracts in the NHL. If Zadina does turn into even modestly a 20-30 guy, like 20 goals, 30 assists, playing on a second line, that'll be one of the best value contracts in the NHL. Now, I'm not saying that's likely to happen.
That's literally the other end of the spectrum, like very end.
Yeah, but would anybody in the world be surprised if I told you, hey, he learned to aim. Filip Zadina scored 20 goals this year.
He learned to aim is shoot better.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people would think that's completely out of the realm of, I don't think people would think that's crazy. Again, based on the way his career's played out so far, not the most likely scenario. But we had our hot take nuclear take on the thing that wouldn't even be a lukewarm take. It'd be like, yeah, okay, he finally gets together. It happens with young players. So I was shocked that Zadina agreed to a 3-year contract at that AAV. I figured Zadina would want to bet more on himself. And I'm not surprised that the AAV came in at this, because Yzerman obviously is like, hey, we like you, but you haven't done anything yet. So we're not going to pay you like you've done anything yet. And Zadina would have countered with, fair enough. Then give me a 1 or 2 year deal, and then you'll have to pay me more. A 3-year deal, because if Zadina does get it together in the next year or two, he's leaving probably a decent amount of money on the table.
I understand what you're saying in a vacuum, but I think considering the year Zadina had, nearly a full season, played 74 games, he had 10 goals. He had 10 goals, 14 assists, 24 points, and he really lapsed into some of the worst habits and slumps that he sees in his game. So his confidence really...
Define habits.
I think he overthinks and tries to do everything when he's not finishing, which was supposed to be one of the premier parts of his game, which turns into poor decision making when he can do better. And I think he's liable for turnovers, kind of boneheaded turnovers, when he's a way better player than that. It's not all the time, but we saw him at his, I would say, to simplify it, we saw him at his lowest lows this past season. So I think his confidence is short. So yeah, you're right. He probably left some money on the table by taking, let's call it an extra year. But I think the gamble he's taking here is, okay, this team is willing to buy into me as a player for 3 more years, barring a trade. He's signed as a restricted free agent, and he's a restricted free agent for, he's not UFA eligible for any of these years or equivalent, so he has no trade protection possible. But he said, this team's buying into me for 3 more years. I need to take advantage of that and really use these 3 years to maximize who I am as a player, because I have not shown the Red Wings what I can do. And I agree with you, Brad. $1.825 million. I think the qualifying offer at the end of it will be $2.19 million as an
nothing
ARB eligible RFA. It's not. It's especially with the cap, it's going to be higher than that. Will be even cheaper than this.
If Filip Zadina isn't worth 2.2 at the end of this contract, he's not making it to the end of this contract.
Yeah, it's fine. So on balance, the Red Wings got an all scenarios win here. It would take something absolutely catastrophic and for this to not be at least worth 1.825 for the next 3 years. And then in that case, you're just like, okay.
You're on the hook for, even if you bury him in the minors, they're on the hook for what, about 900,000?
It's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Couple more hot and readies.
That's it. If you're wondering why your pizza's 50 more cents, Michigan, that's why. But no,
Thanks, Philip.
Genuinely though, I think I'm talking absolute worst case doom and gloom, and that's not what I believe in. My bias.
That's not what my eyes show me either.
No, because
I think Filip Zadina just went through his worst case scenario, as you already mentioned.
I agree.
That, if this last season is all we ever get from Filip Zadina, I still think 1.8 is fine. Like, he wasn't a net negative player on the Red Wings last year, and
no, over the course of the season, no.
yeah, like, did he have like 15 to 20 games where you're like, best to forget about those ones? Of course, but like most Red Wings had a lot of those last year.
Yeah, but he's talented enough where he shouldn't have.
No, and of course not. But again, it was his first 82 game season. Mm-hmm. Like, he's been we'll call it a COVID baby in the NHL, where he hasn't had any consistency. That was his first full season, because again, the season before was a COVID shortened season, et cetera, et cetera. So, did we expect full consistency out of him? No. And did we get it? No. Did we see flashes of what made him a 6th overall pick? Yeah. Is he going to live up to that? Definitely not. But at the very least, what I will conservatively say is, I think what Filip Zadina is better than he showed last year. And if it's even a little better than he showed last year, it's a good value contract.
There were some learnings with Filip Zadina. I just gave the doom and gloom points. Let me give you some of the positive points that Brad alluded to there. When he wasn't absolutely slumping and in his own head because shots weren't going in, and he had bad bounces or whatever, which led to just bad habits and spiraling downwards, he was doing a lot of things well. He's a better playmaker than he gets credit for. He was able to carry the puck, and when he was, it sounds so stupid to say, but when he wasn't making bad decisions, he was making great decisions on the ice.
Huh.
When he was, yeah, I know, right? Simply win. When he was paired with someone like Jacob Vrana, who obviously is a phenomenal player to be paired with, you really saw a lot of things click with him. He's not going to drive a line on his own. We've learned that with Filip Zadina. That was the hope when you drafted him 6th overall, that maybe from the wing he'd be able to drive play a little bit more. And that's okay that he's not that player. Like Brad said, we can't hold him to that 6th overall pick standard anymore. Much like Michael Rasmussen, you have to let go of where they were drafted and just hope that they can turn out to the best version of what we've seen from them. If Derek Lalonde and the Red Wings coaching staff and management staff just gives Zadina the best situation to work with and helps to stop him from getting so down and spiraling further and further downwards, I genuinely think we can see more of the positive games, where instead of 15 to 20 games where it's like it's best to forget that, it's like a handful each year, the same amount that Larkin has or Bertuzzi has or any like other good player on the Red Wings.
Stinks on the same night the team stinks.
If he ends up being a middle 6 player who can contribute on the power play, I think that's a really good turnout for the Red Wings right now. I think he could be more than that, but I think that's what they should be targeting with him. And I think there's still so much in him. He's still 22 years old. He'll be 23 at the end of November. He's still 22. I think this guy has a lot more in him, and it's not like he's devoid of talent. He's not end of career Franz Nielsen out there. It's very hot, very cold. I mean, the easiest thing to fix is the finishing ability, but I just don't know that shooting skill is necessarily there at the NHL level.
I mean, for perspective, they were picked about a round apart, but he was in the same draft as Jonathan Berggren. And we're talking, he probably doesn't make the Wings this year. Mm-hmm. And Zadina's going into his, 4th season? So, I don't think we should be too down on him just yet. I mean, he was young enough to qualify for Corey Promin's pipeline rankings this week.
Yeah, which I thought was... Red Wings ranked 2nd, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that he qualified for that. I think he's...
But there's so many players in the league that it's really easy to forget just how young they are. If you polled anybody around the league, or even your average Red Wings fan, not allowed to Google it, how old is Filip Zadina, it feels like the answer is like 26.
Michael Rasmussen, 33.
Yeah.
I honestly am often talking in circles when I talk about Filip Zadina, because my very obvious bias is that I want this guy to succeed. And not because it's like, oh, we want to be right about Zadina because we were excited about him. I think most people were. It's just that it's not like he's been a flop from the start. We've seen it in him. I think there's more to be unlocked. It's not a guarantee that it will be. It's on him and it's on the coaching staff, but I think it's there.
I would think it's one of the top priorities for the coaching staff will be to fix or be the Filip Zadina whisperers.
Yeah.
Like you would think it. Because they've basically got the team already. Like they brought in all these guys. They're not getting an ultra superstar like Edmondson might make the team, but you're really going to have to develop from what you have on the Red Wings roster right now. And Filip Zadina, if he scored 20 goals this season, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I'd say that's a job well done after the past season.
A 20-goal season, I think, should be the target.
Absolutely.
And for a small sample, but we've seen him score at a 20-goal pace before.
Yeah, he was a half a point per game player well into the start of his career, and it wasn't until this season where he like really dropped off of that pace. But yeah, it's there. And Yzerman took a gamble in the sense that he's like, well, we'll keep you around for 3 years. We like you enough to at least have you for that long. And like I said, Zadina said, okay, let's do it. So, and at the end of it, Zadina is still an RFA. Detroit will still control his rights. So if it does go really, really well, he's still going to get paid because he'll be 25 at the end of this contract. So, he could still get a payday.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned something when we were covering this on Twitter, Brad, and I think people might not like the point, but it's a fair one. And in the business of hockey and players who don't have trade protection, it's one to talk about. If you're into that sort of thing, this is, I think, how you phrased it.
Yep.
It's a tradable contract, if need be.
Very tradable.
There have been, I think, pretty well substantiated rumors that have been floating around and that we've heard personally that Filip Zadina has been shopped or part of conversations before. Obviously hasn't moved, but there have been questions on whether the team was fully in on him at different points. So not to say that the team's out on him and they just signed him only to trade him, but this is a movable deal, and that's another advantage to it for Yzerman and the Red Wings.
I think this contract increased his value as a trade asset, looking at it from that point, because if there's a team truly out there that looks at Filip Zadina and goes, we can fix him, then they're going to think they're getting phenomenal value in the second and third year of this contract, depending if he gets traded. And it's would be, again, pretty low risk for the team trading for him, because if it doesn't work out, like I said, it'd only be about $900 on the cap hit to bury him in the minors. So yeah, it turns into a, potential just change of scenery trade to, okay, this could be a valuable asset to a lot of teams.
We talked a lot about Zadina's struggles over the last season, especially. What in your mind needs to change in his game, and what needs to change in his deployment or usage from a coaching perspective? So, both sides of the coin here. What needs to be done differently to give Filip Zadina the best chance of being the best Filip Zadina?
A shooter tutor in his driveway.
Is it?
It sounds overly simplistic, and yes, the reasons for it are much more complicated, because when you lack confidence, you rush shots, you feed the shot into the shin pads of the defender, you don't pick the right spots to take the shot. So it's more complicated than just his aim sucks. But I think all of Zadina's problems come down to his shooting right now. And I truly mean that, because we've seen him at his best away from the shooting be a good defensive player, competes super hard, can distribute the puck, one of the best players on the Red Wings for transporting the puck through the neutral zone and into the offensive zone. He's one of the better zone entry players. He can create chances off the rush better than almost anybody not named Dylan Larkin on the Red Wings. And then he gets to the net, screws it all up, destroys his confidence, and then like a virus, it starts spreading into the other parts of his games. Because when he's going, you can see it. He gets if he could play Carolina every game, because it feels like every goal he's ever scored has been against Carolina, he'd look like an entirely different player. But yeah, when you miss that many chances, when you expect to have 25 goals based on the chances you've generated and you're walking away with 10, yeah, your confidence is almost impossible to keep high at that point. And if you have no confidence with the puck, well, guess what? You're going to stop carrying the puck. You're not going to want the puck. You're going to want to give away the puck. You want this on and off your stick as quickly as possible. So, that wasn't the case for every game with him. Like most games, he was able to keep that under control, but when he couldn't, it was obvious.
It was malignant. It spread to every part of his game, where shooting talent shouldn't turn into a boneheaded decision in your own zone where you're giving the puck away. But it did. That's the kind of mental that he struggled with, where I think you have to kind of think that he was in the doghouse a lot. He played, and you said this last season, Brad, he played like he was afraid to make mistakes when he was at his lowest.
To be fair, that wasn't a problem exclusive to Filip Zadina.
No, but I think it affected him the most. He had the hardest time breaking out of that.
And he did get bumped down the lineup a lot last year, and his ice time did suffer. And justifiably based on the way he was playing, yeah. Justifiable based on how those around him were playing, no. So, players aren't dumb. They see that as well. If I'm Filip Zadina and go, yeah, I'm not playing great, but holy shit, look at what those guys are doing.
It's very nice that he now has a coach that's not, Derek Lalonde is going to be fighting for his job, but not in the same sense as Jeff Blashill was.
Yeah.
Like Jeff Blashill was trying to scratch out some wins to really try and hang on to something.
Every win was his employment on the line.
Whereas, the leash, which I hate saying, Derek Lalonde's got so much room to try new things and try out combinations and let guys make some mistakes. I only think that is a positive for Filip Zadina. And
getting pushed down the lineup now isn't as big of a punishment as it used to be. Now, if he gets pushed down the lineup, he's not banished to the land of misfit players with Adam Ernie and Giovanni Smith, who are completely incapable of getting him the puck. So,
his worst case right now might be playing with Joe Veleno, which is great.
Yeah, and they had stretches together last year where they looked good. So, if that's his worst case scenario, at least he's better off than he was last year.
Yeah, I can't sit here. I would love to see Filip Zadina playing with Jacob Vrana, but I would also love to see Jacob Vrana playing with whoever the best wingers are on the Red Wings, and that might not be Filip Zadina.
There might be a lot of preseason time where that happens.
Well,
because we'll try stuff like that out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Lalonde does with that, because the Red Wings, the way their forwards are built, you can almost perfectly cut a line between the first line, second line, and third line at each position just based on skill. Lucas Raymond is obviously the best right winger. David Perron is obviously the second best. Filip Zadina is obviously the third. You look at left wing, it goes Bertuzzi, Vrana, Kubalik, center, Larkin, Kopp, Suter, literally chop it. So you would think those should be the lines. And, if I'm building a team, that's how I build the lines. But there's a lot to be said about balancing lines and maybe getting a second line talent on your third line to balance it out. And we did see the obvious chemistry Vrana and Zadina have had. So maybe Perron and Zadina flip-flop, and then just to kind of keep those matchups together, and then running instead of a de facto number 2 line, you have a slightly weakened second line, but now a second and third line that is legitimately dangerous, which is something not every coach, but a lot of coaches do deploy. And if Lalonde wants to take that strategy, pairing up Zadina with Vrana would be the best way to maximize that based on what we've seen in the past.
Like Evan just said, not even just the preseason, but over this entire year as the Red Wings figure out their chemistry with all those new players that Brad just talked about, I think there's going to be opportunity to do that. And you're right, Evan, I think
you'll see it in training camp too.
Yeah.
I bet you there'll be a very clear idea of very early in training camp what they're sort of thinking or what they're trying to tease or what they're trying to play around with. And,
Filip Zadina now has, I think he can breathe a little more now that he has a contract. And what he now has to do, aside from the joke I made earlier, which is just play well, which is even if he's bumped down the lineup because there are really great players ahead of him, be ready for the first injury, trade, whatever opportunity to go in and step in. And, anytime the top 6 are slumping, and if he's not in them, then be the depth scoring to justify moving up. This is an opportunity for Filip Zadina. I don't want to say it's he's lucky to have it. No, I think it would have been foolish for the Red Wings to just outright give up on him for nothing. But he has to make really good use of this next year, especially.
He has every opportunity to garner success at this point.
Yeah. All in all, from Filip Zadina perspective, not counting money left on the table or whatever, I think he has to be happy having 3 years of runway and confidence from the team. And from an Yzerman and Red Wings perspective, is this going to win them the cup? No, but for an RFA contract and a player in Zadina's situation, there are very few scenarios where the Red Wings don't come out ahead here, in my mind. I think this is a really, really good piece of work from Yzerman and his front office.
Yeah, the worst case scenario we talked about, I actually don't think is I give it a less than 2% chance. I think the baseline is he is what he is, and you're paying 1.8 for a half decent third liner. I think that truly is the realistic worst case scenario, which is fine.
It's the same as Michael Rasmussen. You're paying them not a lot of your cap, where worst case they are what they are right now, which isn't what you wanted, but it still contributes in a way to the team as long as you use them properly. That's it.
And unlike Rasmussen, there actually is a chance Zadina could pop. Like,
whoa.
No.
Like,
I'll back off. You two go at it.
Rasmussen can outplay the contract for sure and showed potential of it, but like Rasmussen's not a guy who there's not a thought in anybody's head that he's a 25-30 goal scorer.
But wasn't that one of your hot takes, Evan, that Rasmussen could pop 25?
Or did I say 20? I probably said 25 because that's more hot.
Yeah, it was a hot take. But
we're referencing right now our last Patreon exclusive off-season episode was Hot Take Nuclear Take, and we did Red Wings and NHL takes, so it's good fun.
And it kind of turned into Red Wings, NHL, and Leafs. But
yeah, guess what we had to say about the Leafs? Subscribe to find out.
But I like we've seen improvement from Rasmussen, but we've never seen Rasmussen at the NHL level look like a 25 goal guy. He's never. We have seen.
Well. Do I have something in store for you for 22-23?
I hope so. But we have seen stretches from Zadina where he looks like a legitimately dangerous top six forward. So he just has to, like, again, at this point, likely nobody's saying it is, but that still remains in the world of possibilities for Filip Zadina.
So 15-goal Michael Rasmussen, you think, is the absolute peak we'll see from him?
Not peak, but I think we're close to it.
Okay, because
like I think like a career year for Michael Rasmussen at this point is like 20-ish goals, give or take.
I think the nice thing about Michael Rasmussen, I think he was lost at the start of his career. Like they really wanted to force him at center. He didn't really know how to fit in. He was young. He was stuck in this weird spot, and I think last year really he started to figure out what his role is and how he can succeed in the NHL. And we definitely saw that as the season progressed. So I think this year, him and Filip Zadina have everything in place for them now to succeed. It's just they have to grab on and do it.
In the textbook of how to develop a prospect, there's going to be entire chapters on Michael Rasmussen and Dennis Cholowski just labeled what not to do.
Yeah.
Dennis Cholowski's name popping up on the cap-friendly transactions, like every 4 months, is like, oh, what could have been?
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.